So welcome to the aggression revision screencast, and aggression is one of the bigger topics that we'll look into, so lots to get through. So firstly, what is aggression? We need to have a good idea of definitions of what aggression is and what it means. So firstly, a basic definition of behaviour directed towards intentionally harming or injuring another living being. So within that definition, you're required to know the criteria of what makes up an aggressive act. So have a go at the 4 criteria, and then we'll have a quick discussion about the extra 5th one. Okay, so hopefully we've got a few of these. So first of all, it's got to be a behaviour. It's actually got to be carried out. There's some sort of harm involved or injury, and that will be to another living person. So living organism technically, but in sport obviously we're talking about another person. And the one that probably causes most discussion as to whether something is aggressive or not is there's got to be intent. So you must intend to hurt the other person. Another one that can be added in here normally by the exam board is that it's outside the laws of the game. This isn't technically always correct because there are some sports where aggression and intending to be aggressive is actually within the laws of the game, and this is where we hit some grey areas within this topic of aggression and the types of aggression. But certainly within some combat sports, so for example boxing, you must look to be aggressive within the laws of the game. So it's not always true, but you often will get a mark for it. So types of aggression, you need to know there are 2 main types of aggression. And then a third type of behaviour which isn't aggression, but which is often, again thinking about this grey area, is the type of behaviour that is often mixed up with aggression. So if you could just write those 3 down now, just the titles. Okay, so I'm hoping that we've got hostile aggression, we've got instrumental aggression, and then we've got assertiveness or assertion, which is not aggression, but is the one that's often muddled up with aggression. So first of all, hostile aggression. This is where the primary goal is to inflict injury. So it's often an emotional response or reaction, and it will, this is the type of aggression that will be outside of the rules of the game. So extreme examples, Tyson beating off Holyfield's ear, somebody going into punching someone in rugby, for example, the extreme obvious examples of aggression which are hostile. So secondly, instrumental aggression occurs in the quest of a non-aggressive goal. So it's the aggression is the instrument that we use in order to achieve the main goal, which is to win. So my main goal is to win. In order to win, I need to be aggressive. So this is where we're saying potentially, in some instances, maybe within the rules of the game, depending on what sort of sport we're talking about. I think the key here is that with instrumental aggression is to know that it is aggression. Alright, it's instrumental aggression, therefore there is intent to harm. So this point here is a big one, so don't get it muddled up. Often people think instrumental aggression isn't aggression, as in there is no intent, that it's accidental, and that's not true. So lastly, assertiveness, and the key point here is there's no intent to harm. So this is playing hard but playing fair within the rules. Accidents here would be, any injury would be an accident. It's not intentional. So let's have a look at this question. We've got explain the terms aggression and instrumental aggression for your 3 marks. So you can see here that we've got the mainly in the top part of the question here we've got the criteria. So you can see intent to harm. You can see that it's outside of the rules, which exam board will give you. There is harm involved, and it actually has to occur. In other words, it's a behaviour. In terms of instrumental aggression, you can see that we're looking at that it can be within the laws, as we've already discussed. Now I do have a problem with point F, because what I've just told you is the opposite to that. Point F is actually incorrect. That harm is not accidental at all, so I'm not having that. But this is what sometimes happens on mark schemes. And lastly, that we use instrumental aggression to achieve another goal. So I would hope that you would have got easily enough marks with the correct points on the mark scheme without the incorrect point F getting in the way of that. So, theories of aggression. There are 4 main theories that you need to know about and you need to be able to explain. So write the names of the theories down now. So I'm hoping that you know the names at the very least, so that we have the instinct theory, we have social learning theory, we have frustration aggression theory, and we have aggression cue theory. You need to be prepared to get at least 3-4 points in terms of an explanation for each of these theories, in particular. Social learning theory and frustration aggression tend to be ones that would be asked for on separate questions. But let's start with instinct theory. So can you get 3 main points on instinct theory? So hopefully you're aware that instinct theory is our trait theory. So that should help you out in terms of what trait means. So we should be talking about genetics and it being innate or inherited. And Freud said that we all have this trait within us, that we have an instinct to dominate others. Another point we can make around instinct theory is this thing about catharsis, and that catharsis is building up within us according to these trait theorists. Lorenz said that that's constantly building up and we need to get rid of it. So one way we can get rid of it is through being aggressive, and that gets rid of that tension. So the second theory, social learning theory. Like I said before, there's probably more likelihood that this would be asked by itself. So can you get 4 points on social learning theory? Okay, so as with all social learning theories, key points that aggression is learned. I think it's almost a bonus point that you can talk about non-aggression as well. That can be learned, and obviously that's important with us moving forward in terms of controlling behaviour. Social learning theory, again, as a general principle that we have, is modelling, that we learn from modelling others. So we learn aggression and non-aggression from role models, significant others who we copy, and then behaviour if it's reinforced, or if you think it's going to be reinforced. So if you think aggression would be reinforced by your coach, for example, you're more likely to do it. Certainly if aggression is reinforced, say by your coach, you're definitely more likely to do it again. Opposite to that though, and a separate point here, is around punishment. So if you think you're going to get punished, you're less likely to do it. And again, if you actually are punished, say by the referee, or it could be your coach, then you're less likely to do the behaviour again. So let's have a quick look at a question so we can see that some of the main points that we've discussed are on here. So aggression is learned, as is non-aggression. And then we've got the modelling point, talking about some of the types of models here. So the high status significant other role model type of an answer, and then we've got reinforcement, and then around the punishment. So easily getting enough there for our 4 marks. So frustration aggression theory. This is a model that you should be able to piece together and explain through how the model fits together in order to pick up your marks. So if you can have a go at sketching out the model, that would be useful, or some of the key points within it. Okay, so frustration aggression suggests that we have a drive towards achieving a goal here, and that drive that something gets in the way. So we have an obstacle getting in the way of this. This leads to frustration, and frustration leads to aggression. So this is our first main couple of points. So drive to a goal, obstacle towards the goal, leading to frustration, which leads to aggression. Depending on what happens with that aggression depends on what happens next. So if the aggression is successful, then that leads to what we've already discussed, the catharsis. So we feel good and get rid of that pent-up energy. However, if aggression is punished, we become more frustrated and we're more likely to become aggressive again. So aggression cue hypothesis, if you could get at least a couple of points around what this theory suggests. So aggression cue hypothesis is slightly different to frustration aggression theory. It talks about frustration and arousal. It talks about frustration, but the difference here is that it suggests that frustration increases arousal rather than leading directly to aggression. And what it says is that basically that increased arousal leads to a state where you're kind of ready to be aggressive, and that all it's going to take is an aggressive cue to trigger the aggression. There are various aggressive cues that can do this. It could be actual equipment like a hockey stick that might be associated with violent acts, or boxing gloves. It could be various people. It could be the fact that you're playing your arch rival. It could be that someone has been aggressive towards you. So there are lots of cues that might tip you over the edge and make you aggressive in this situation. However, being an interactionist theory, the bottom point here suggests that we do learn and that we are able to control that frustration, and that we know the best times when we can be aggressive and when we can't be. So another question that has frustration as its main point in the question. So how does frustration lead to aggression? So you can see that what we've got here is some points on frustration aggression theory. So all of the top three there, and that basically that leads to aggression, and then catharsis from reducing the frustration. And then we've got an extra point on this question around aggression cue theory, and you can see that we're basically just linking that as an extra general point in there. So aggression, we would argue, is a bad thing in sport, and one of the jobs of various people within the sport is how to control it. So we need to know about how performers can control their own aggression. We need to know how a coach can control aggression, how officials can control aggression, and as a fourth extra one, a national governing body. Now, I put that as a separate entity there because I think, to be honest, that they're more likely to ask you that question within your evaluating section on the exam and not in the sports psychology. Can you come up though with so let's use the top three. Can you come up with, because we can use answers across all three here that would apply, maybe some separate ones for the officials, but can you come up with 3, 4, 5 ways that you could control aggression? Okay, so we can see that we do have some transferable answers. So we've got something around arousal. So the performer can control their arousal. The coach can lower the arousal of a player. We can also remove yourself from the situation, and again we could argue that by either substituting the player here, that we can do that as a coach as well. Players can set their own performance goals, as can coaches. So you can see we've got some transferable answers here. The official might be slightly different, so answers that we might be looking at here is around being consistent, pre-warning the players. You could argue that might lead to the lowering of arousal and of the punishment. And again, the coach can punish that player, perhaps by the substitution. So you can see that this is a coach question. How would the coach reduce the aggressive tendencies? You can see that we've got most of the answers that we've talked about there. So we've got reinforcing good or assertive behaviour, take them away, remove them, or penalise them, reduce their arousal levels, which you've got an example here as an extra mark, looking at performance goals here, and don't reinforce aggressive behaviour. So again, plenty of answers on this type of a question, which obviously could be second half of a 14 marker as well. So that's aggression, one of our bigger topics that we need to look at. We need to know, so just recap briefly, you need to know around what is aggression and the types. So quickly jot down the types of aggression and try to explain them, say what they are. You need to know the theories. So quickly jot down the 4 theories and say a couple of points about each. And we need to be able to control aggression. So again, just scribble down a couple of points as to how you would control or reduce aggression. Okay, thanks for listening. Hope it's been useful and enjoy the topic.